Air Force One. It's a flying fortress, a mobile Oval Office, a tech-packed symbol of presidential power that's as much about security and legacy as it is about engineering marvels. This isn't your average Boeing. With over 4,000 square feet, bulletproof windows, and a medical suite, Air Force One is basically the White House with jet engines and the food enough to feed 100 people mid-air. But wait, what else is inside the secretive Sky Palace? And how did it all begin? Let's rewind. The concept of transporting the president and his own private plane first came about in World War II. Yep, it happened in 1943. Franklin D. Roosevelt's advisors at the time thought traveling by passenger plane would be risky and crossing the ocean by ship even worse. German U-boats lurked beneath the waves, so FDR boarded the Dixie Clipper, a giant Boeing 314 flying boat, and took to the skies, crossing the Atlantic to meet Winston Churchill at the top-secret Casablanca conference. It was a bold start, but the iconic name Air Force One that didn't show up until years later. And, for a pretty surprising reason, the name Air Force One didn't appear until 1953. Why? Because of a near miss with a commercial airline. After that, the call sign Air Force One was officially locked in to avoid mix-ups, only used when the president is aboard. Today, the Air Force One name refers to one of two highly customized Boeing 747-200B series aircraft. It has a max speed of 630 miles per hour and can fly as high as 45,100 feet. Its range is 7,800 statute miles, though it can be refueled in the air in case of emergency. The current Air Force One aircraft has served through 6 presidents, but it's aging. Maintenance costs have skyrocketed. Parts are harder to find than some Cold War secrets. And in an era of cyber threats and hypersonic missiles, it's time for a serious upgrade. Did you know the president's plane wasn't always the flying fortress we know today? Back in the day, President Truman flew on a much humbler ride, the Independence. It was actually a souped-up military version of the Douglas DC-6, not the kind of luxury jet you'd imagine for a world leader. Ever wondered what it's like to fly like a president? You've seen the photos of presidents climbing the stairs to board Air Force One, but did you know that there are actually 2 entrances to this plane? The president, his family, and special guests use the front entrance near the nose of the plane. Journalists board the plane in the rear. Inside, there's a jaw-dropping 4,000 square feet spread over 3 levels. The main deck includes the president's suite, offices, communication center, and staff seating. The lower level is primarily used for cargo and equipment, while the upper deck includes the cockpit and some crew space, but it's not fully accessible for passengers. The most important spaces aboard Air Force One are located near the president's entrance in the front of the plane. The president gets a private suite that feels more like a sky-high command center with a spacious office, a personal lavatory, and even a full-on conference room for big decisions mid-air. That's where you'll find the president's private office. The office was upgraded after the 9/11 terror attacks with the telecommunications equipment necessary to address the nation from the skies. On September 11, 2001, President George W. Bush used Air Force One as a mobile command post as the U.S. faced the worst terrorist attacks in its history. The plane stayed airborne for hours while threats were assessed. Adjacent to the president's office near the entrance of the plane is the Air Force One medical compartment, always staffed with a doctor. It has a supply of blood, drugs, a defibrillator, and even space for minor surgeries. Air Force One also has quarters for those who accompany the president, including senior advisors, Secret Service officers, traveling press, and other guests. Guess where the press sit? All the way in the back of the plane. And no, they don't get a free ride. News outlets actually have to pay the government back for every mile flown. Ever wonder what the president eats at 30,000 feet? The 2 massive kitchens called galleys can whip up meals for 100 people at once. The gourmet meals on Air Force One actually start on the ground at a top-secret kitchen tucked inside Joint Base Andrews. Each dish is carefully cooked, vacuum-sealed, frozen, and then flown up with the crew. Once in the air, it's all reheated to perfection in the plane's galley using stoves, ovens, and good old microwaves. And here's the fun part. The president can request pretty much anything he's craving. But there's one little hiccup. no fryer on board. So, if you ask for fries, yep, they're warm and tasty, but always just a bit on the soggy side. Sure, soggy fries are amusing, but not every flight has been lighthearted. Some carried grief, decisions, and the weight of the nation. Let's rewind to November 22nd, 1963. The world stopped. Shots rang out in Dallas. President Kennedy was assassinated.
President Kennedy has been assassinated. It's official now. The president is dead.
Chaos, grief, but history didn't pause. A few hours later, JFK's casket was loaded onto Sam 26,000, the sleek Boeing 707 that had been customized for him just a year earlier. But then something happened that had never happened before. Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in as president in the tight cabin of Air Force One. Jackie Kennedy stands next to him, still in her pink Chanel suit stained with blood. That moment made LBJ the only president in U.S. history to take the oath aboard an aircraft. Fast forward to 1974, Nixon's turn. He boards Air Force One as president and lands as a civilian. That dramatic wave from the stairs. Iconic. But here's the wild part. Once the plane lifted off, the call sign switched from Air Force One to SAM 27,000. Just like that, the presidency was over. A title gone midair. Now zoom in on 2016. Barack Obama touches down in Havana, first U.S. president to visit Cuba in 88 years. It was history breaking through Cold War silence. The moment the wheels hit Cuban soil, it was like decades of tension took a deep breath. But the boldest flight, 2023. President Biden boards the plane in darkness. No ceremony, no cameras. Lands in Poland. Then an armored train to Kyiv, Ukraine, a capital under threat. First modern president to visit an active war zone without U.S. military control on the ground. This was one of the most secretive and logistically complex Air Force One missions in decades. It carried a message of defiance, of unity, of courage. Let's dig a little deeper into the look of Air Force One, because behind that simple blue and white paint job is a whole world of symbolism. When John F. Kennedy stepped into office, he didn't just want a plane, he wanted a message. So he brought in Raymond Loewy, the design genius behind the Shell logo, and countless iconic products, including Coca-Cola vending machines. And instead of slapping a giant U.S. flag all over the tail, they kept it cool. A clean stripe, the presidential seal, and United States of America stretching proudly across the side, all in capital letters. But did you know this design became so iconic that other world leaders copied it? From France to Japan, nations began repainting their own aircraft to look more presidential after seeing Air Force One's fresh new look. It became a flying brand. Now, let's talk Trump's redesign attempt. His proposed color scheme wasn't just patriotic, it looked a lot like his private 757, which had gold seatbelts and Trump logos embroidered into the headrests. But changing the design of Air Force One isn't like repainting your living room. Every adjustment has consequences. That bold paint, the U.S. Air Force eventually concluded that the proposed paint job would absorb more heat, possibly requiring extra cooling equipment, not ideal for desert tarmac or emergency landings. It would have overheated the electronics, potentially adding millions in cooling upgrades and even delayed the aircraft rollout. So yeah, aesthetics matter, but engineering wins. So here's the question, should Air Force One ever get a makeover, or is that blue and white legacy untouchable? Let me know in the comments. Alright, let's peel back the curtain on Air Force One's top secret security setup, because this isn't just a plane, it's a flying command center, a war room, and a mobile fortress, all rolled into one. First off, missile defense systems. Yep, real ones. If a threat's detected, this bird doesn't just duck and cover, it fights back. Then there's radar jamming tech. A digital smoke bomb. It scrambles enemy tracking so the plane becomes a ghost on the radar. Now let's talk about EMP protection. A regular plane hit by an electromagnetic pulse. Fried electronics, zero controls, chaos. Air Force One shielded to the core. It's hardened like a bunker, built to keep flying even if the sky lights up with nukes. And yeah, it doesn't need to land. Mid-air refueling means it could stay up for days, floating over the chaos, keeping the president safe and connected. Imagine a floating White House that never touches the ground. Inside, a classified communication suite that's basically the brain of the nation in crisis. Encrypted everything. Satellite uplinks, secure video calls with world leaders. Oh, and rumors. There's talk of laser defense systems in the works. Star Wars-style tech that could shoot incoming missiles right out of the sky. Unconfirmed, but not impossible. Here's a question for you. If this is what we know, what do you think we don't? So, Air Force One is getting a significant upgrade. The older model has served presidents since the early 90s, but the new one, oh, it's built for a totally different world. We're talking cyber warfare, global chaos, and TikTok-level speed for communication systems. The entire project has been delayed till 2027, partially due to supply issues, cost battles, and even a worker allegedly sleeping inside the plane. Of course, the real Air Force One has its secrets, but not the kind Hollywood likes to imagine. Movies like Air Force One made us believe it's a secret bat cave in the sky. But in real life, let's bust some myths. Myth number 1. Guns hidden in every drawer. Nope, it's not an airborne armory. Security is handled by people, not trapdoors and hidden turrets. Myth number 2. Escape pod under the Oval Office desk. Not even close. That's pure movie magic. There's no Batman-style ejecto seat for the president. In a real emergency, the goal is to land fast, not fly out like Iron Man. Myth number 3. The president just hops on like it's an Uber. In reality, every trip requires months of planning. There are backup planes, security sweeps, weather routes, even local hospital partnerships in case of emergencies. Several cargo planes typically fly ahead of Air Force One to provide the president with vehicles and services needed in remote locations. So, yeah, maybe he's not roundhouse kicking hijackers, but what can the president do from 40,000 feet? Start a war, end a war, speak to the world, or call home, which is cooler than any movie script. So now you've peeked behind the curtain, past the press section, the president's suite, the onboard hospital, and into the shadowy world of radar jammers and missile defense. And with the new upgraded Air Force One on the way, the future of presidential travel looks bolder, faster, and more secure than ever. But here's what really sticks. It's about moments. History made in the skies. From swearing in a president to flying into a war zone, it's a reminder that the presidency doesn't pause at 30,000 feet. Got more questions? We've got deep dives, wild facts, and jaw-dropping secrets coming your way. Tap that next video because Air Force One is just the beginning.